The storm had no mercy that night. Dark clouds rolled across the alien sky, and thunder cracked like the anger of gods. At the edge of a high cliff, a group of tall alien warriors stood in a circle. Their sharp armor reflected the lightning, and their cold eyes looked down at a trembling girl. She was young, no more than 16 cycles in her people's count. Her eyes were wide, glowing faintly with a strange silver hue of her kind. Her long, dark hair whipped wildly in the storm's wind, and her hands shook as she clutched at the stone ground. She was beautiful, but to the warriors around her, beauty meant nothing. "Her birth is a curse," one of the elders said. His voice was heavy with judgment. "She is weak. She is not fit to carry the bloodline forward." The girl tried to speak, but fear made her words stumble. "Please, I am not weak. I can learn. I can serve." Her words were cut short when a soldier shoved her forward, forcing her near the cliff's edge. Below was only darkness and roaring wind. The fall was certain death. "Silence!" the elder commanded. His hand lifted, signaling the final act. The girl's heart pounded in her chest like a trapped bird. She wanted to scream, to run, to fight, but the warriors were stronger. She was only a child among predators. The storm howled around her, and in that cruel moment, she understood. Her own people would end her life. With one swift motion, she was pushed. Her scream cut through the storm as her body fell into the abyss. Her silver eyes widened in terror, her fingers clawing at empty air. The warriors turned away coldly, convinced her story had ended. But fate had other plans. Years passed. The galaxy moved on, but whispers remained, legends of a cursed child thrown from cliffs. Some said she had died. Others whispered she had been taken by the shadows below. The truth was more complex. She had survived, broken and battered. The girl had not met death at the bottom of the abyss. Instead, something strange had caught her, roots from an ancient alien tree that clung to the cliffside. They had held her body, broken but alive, until scavengers found her. She lived, but she was no longer the same. Her body carried scars, and her spirit carried pain. She learned to survive among outcasts, those abandoned by their own kind. She grew in silence, far from her people, her heart heavy with anger and sadness. Every night, she remembered the faces of those who pushed her. Every night, she dreamed of the day she might return. But destiny would not come from her alone. Far across the stars, in a different world, a human soldier named Ethan walked to the ruins of battle. He had fought for years on alien soil, defending colonies, surviving wars no one on Earth could imagine. He was strong, but his eyes carried the weariness of endless struggle. He never imagined his path would cross with a girl from another world, a girl once thrown from a cliff. The meeting came in fire and blood. Ethan was stationed with a small squad on a rugged alien frontier. The mission was simple: protect settlers from raids. But nothing was ever simple in the galaxy. That night, the outpost was attacked. Strange alien mercenaries stormed the walls, their weapons flashing red in the darkness. The humans fought back, but they were outnumbered. Ethan's squad fell one by one, until he was alone, wounded and desperate. He ran into the nearby cliffs, hoping to lose his pursuers. The storm returned that night, just as it had years before. The sky cracked open, and rain poured down in sheets. He stumbled near the edge of the same cliffs where long ago the alien girl had fallen. His body ached, his blood mixed with rain, and death seemed certain. Behind him, alien hunters closed in, and then he saw her. From the shadows of the storm, a figure appeared, a young woman, her silver eyes glowing faintly even in the darkness. Her robes were worn, her face scarred, but her beauty was still striking, almost haunting. She looked at him, not with fear, but with calm strength. Before Ethan could speak, one of the alien hunters lunged toward him. In an instant, the woman moved. Her body flowed with speed that seemed impossible, and her blade struck the attacker down in a flash of light. The rest of the hunters hesitated. She stood between Ethan and his enemies, her silver eyes fierce, her stance unshaken. For Ethan, time slowed. He didn't know who she was or why she was here, but he knew one thing. She had just saved his life, And deep inside her heart, the girl who was once cast off a cliff realized something too. Fate had not abandoned her. Destiny was only beginning. The rain did not stop. It fell in heavy sheets, drumming against the stone cliffs and washing blood from the ground. Ethan's breath came in sharp gasps as he leaned against the rocks, his body aching from wounds. He stared at the woman who stood between him and the alien hunters. Her silver eyes glowed in the stormlight, sharp and unyielding. She looked like no one he had ever seen before. Her body moved with fluid precision, every strike of her blade clean and final. The alien mercenaries, fierce and merciless only moments ago, now hesitated. It was as if they recognized her or feared her. Ethan gripped his weapon tighter, though his strength was fading. Who are you?" he managed to ask. The woman did not answer at once. Her eyes flicked to him briefly, then back to the enemies. She spoke a word in her own alien tongue, sharp and commanding. The mercenaries froze, exchanged uneasy glances, and slowly backed away into the storm. Within moments, they vanished, leaving only the sound of thunder and rain. Ethan slid down against the cliff wall, exhaustion pulling him down. The woman stood over him, her blade lowered but ready. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, two strangers caught in a storm, both alive when they should have been dead. "You are human," she said finally. Her voice was soft but carried strength, like stone beneath silk. Ethan coughed, managing a weak smile. "Last time I checked." The corner of her lips almost curved, but the expression faded quickly. She knelt beside him, her silver eyes scanning his wounds. Without another word, she tore apart her robe and began binding his arm. Her touch was quick, efficient, but careful. "Why help me?" Ethan asked, wincing as she tied the cloth tight. She paused, her silver eyes locking onto his. "Because you are not my enemy." The answer was simple, yet it carried weight. Ethan didn't push further. He was too tired, and something in her gaze told him she carried secrets not easily shared. The storm raged through the night. The woman led Ethan to a hidden cave in the cliffs, where a small fire flickered against the stone walls. He sat near the flames, shivering from the cold, while she sat opposite him, her blade resting across her knees. Ethan studied her in the firelight. Her face was striking, almost haunting in its beauty. A thin scar ran from her jawline to her neck, a mark of survival. Her robes were patched in many places, signs of a hard life. She looked young, but her eyes carried an old sadness, as if she had seen too much for her years. "You fight like a soldier," Ethan said at last. She looked into the fire, silent for a moment. "I was never meant to fight, but life does not care for what we are meant to be." Her words hung heavy in the cave. Ethan felt the truth in them. He, too, had once dreamed of a life without war, but the galaxy had other plans. "What should I call you?" he asked. She hesitated, then spoke softly. "Lyra." Ethan repeated the name. "Lyra, I'm Ethan." She gave a small nod, her eyes never leaving the flames. As the night passed, Ethan drifted into uneasy sleep. He dreamed of home, of Earth's green fields and blue skies, far from the storm-ridden world. But when he awoke, Lyra was still there, sitting silently, watching the storm outside. The next morning, Ethan felt stronger. His wound still ached, but he could move. He thanked her for saving him. But Lyra only looked at him with that same quiet intensity. "You should not have been here," she said. "Those who hunt you will return. They do not forgive." Ethan gave a tired laugh. "Story of my life." But she was not joking. Her eyes were serious, almost warning him. "If you stay, they will kill you. Or worse." "And what about you?" he asked. She looked away. "I am used to being hunted." Her words made Ethan pause. Something in her tone spoke of deep pain. He wanted to ask more, but she rose suddenly, her blade in hand. "They are coming," she said sharply. Ethan grabbed his weapon and struggled to his feet. Outside, distant shapes moved through the storm. The hunters had returned, and this time they would not leave so easily. Lyra's silver eyes narrowed. She turned to Ethan, her voice steady and strong. "Stay behind me. If destiny has chosen this moment, then we will face it together." Ethan nodded, gripping his weapon tighter. For the first time in years, he felt something different. Not just fear, not just survival, but the strange sense that he was part of something larger. And as the hunters closed in, the storm howling around them, Ethan knew one thing. Meeting this mysterious alien girl was no accident. It was the beginning of something far greater, something that could change both their fates forever. The storm began to fade as dawn approached, leaving the cliffs wet and silent. Broken bodies of hunters lay scattered across the stone. The fire of battle was gone, replaced by the cold weight of survival. Ethan leaned heavily on his rifle, his body aching from blood loss and exhaustion. His eyes followed Lyra as she wiped her blade clean on the fallen leader's cloak. Her silver eyes burned with quiet fire, but her shoulder wound dripped steadily with blood. "You're hurt," Ethan said, his voice hoarse. Lyra gave him a quick look, then pulled a strip of cloth from her robe and bound the wound tightly. "It will not kill me," she replied. "You fought like—" Ethan stopped himself. He didn't know the right word. Warrior? Survivor? Something more? She tightened the knot on her bandage and rose to her feet. "We must move. More will come." Ethan frowned. "We killed their leader." Her eyes turned sharp. Leaders are replaceable. Hunters are endless. She was right, and Ethan knew it. Staying here meant death. He forced himself upright, every step heavy, but his was stronger than his pain. Together they left the cliffside, slipping into the jagged rocks and twisted paths of the mountains. The air was damp, filled with the smell of rain-soaked earth. Each sound of shifting stone made Ethan's nerves spike, but Lyra moved with calm purpose, leading him through paths invisible to his eyes. As they walked, Ethan's mind swirled with questions. He wanted to know more about her past, about the abyss, the elders, and why her own people would cast her away. But he saw the hard set of her jaw, the way her gaze stayed fixed forward, and he held back. For now, by midday, they reached a sheltered gorge. A thin stream ran through the rocks, and strange alien birds circled above. Lyra stopped and crouched, scanning the horizon. Ethan dropped against a boulder, his breath heavy. "Rest," Lyra said firmly. "Your body is weak." Ethan gave a tired laugh. "You don't say." Despite the joke, his eyes kept drifting to her, the way she moved sharp and precise, the way she held her silence, like each word carried weight. He couldn't shake the image of her as a child, falling into the abyss. How had she survived that? What kind of strength kept her alive when even her people had abandoned her? As if sensing his thoughts, Lyra finally spoke. "You wonder why they cast me away." Ethan nodded slowly. "I do." Her silver eyes met his, calm but unflinching. "They feared me, not because I was weak, because I was different." "Different how?" She looked down at her hands, scarred yet graceful. "I was born with something they did not understand. Power, a connection. The elders saw it as corruption, a threat to their control. So they called me cursed." Ethan frowned. "So they tried to kill you, because you scared them." Lyra gave a small, bitter smile. "Fear is the weapon of the weak. They feared what I might become. They believed casting me from the cliffs would erase me from destiny." She looked back at him, her gaze sharp. But destiny is not so easily erased. Ethan studied her in silence. He had seen warlords, soldiers, rebels, but never someone like her. She wasn't just surviving. She was carrying something greater, something her people had tried to bury. Before he could respond, a distant rumble shook the gorge. The sound of engines. "Ships." Lyra stiffened. "They found us." Ethan pushed himself to his feet, pain forgotten. "Then we run." The sky darkened as alien ships descended through the clouds. Sleek and black, they moved like predators hunting prey. Searchlights cut across the rocks, sweeping for movement. Ethan and Lyra darted through narrow paths, slipping between boulders and outcroppings. The air filled with the hum of engines and the sharp cries of hunters deploying from the ships. They moved fast, but the hunters were faster. Shots cracked across the rocks, blasts of energy striking near their feet. Dust and stone exploded around them. Ethan fired back, his rifle spitting bursts of light. He struck one, then another, but for every hunter that fell, two more came. "This way!" Lyra shouted, pulling him toward a hidden crevice. They slipped inside, squeezing to the narrow passage as blasts lit the rocks behind them. The crevice opened into a dark cavern. Inside, strange glowing moss lit the walls, casting eerie green light across the stone. The sound of the battle outside grew distant. For now, they were safe. Ethan collapsed against the wall, chest heaving. We can't keep running like this. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly in the moss light. No, we cannot. She knelt beside him, her voice low and steady. But you must understand, Ethan, this is no longer about survival. You were not meant to be here. Yet fate brought you to me. That means something. Ethan blinked at her, surprised by her sudden intensity. What are you saying? Her gaze locked onto his. I was cast from the cliffs to erase destiny. But you, she reached out, her hand lightly touching his chest, just over his heart. You are proof destiny cannot be erased. Together, we can change everything. Ethan swallowed hard, her words sinking deep. He didn't know what she truly meant yet, but he felt it. The weight of something larger than himself pressing in. Outside, the rumble of engines grew louder again. Hunters searched. Ships circled. But inside the cavern, as Ethan met Lyra's glowing silver eyes, he felt something new. Not just fear. Not just survival. Hope. The old cliff stood in silence. The same place where years ago a girl had been thrown into the abyss. Its jagged edges stretched in the sky like broken teeth, and the roaring wind carried with it whispers of the past. Lyra stood there again, but this time she was not a frightened child. She was tall, graceful, and strong, her alien features glowing in the fading sunlight. Her long silver hair danced with the wind, and her violet eyes shone with determination. The scars of her memory were still there, hidden deep inside, but beside her stood someone who made her heart steady. Daniel. The human looked across the cliff's sharp rocks, his eyes narrowing as he studied the dangerous ground. His boots pressed into the dirt, and his hand rested near the weapon on his side. He was no ordinary traveler anymore. He was a soldier of fate, a man who had seen war, loss, and betrayal. Daniel turned to Lyra. This is where it began for you, he said softly. Lyra's throat tightened. She saw the shadows of her past, the cruel hands that had thrown her down, the voices that laughed as she fell. The memory made her shiver, but then she felt Daniel's warm hand take hers. He did not let go. They thought they ended me here, she whispered. I survived. Because of you. Daniel gave a small smile, but his eyes stayed sharp. No, you survived because you were stronger than they ever knew. I was only there to remind you. Before Lyra could reply, the ground shook with footsteps. Heavy, armored, merciless. Out from the trees behind them came a group of alien warriors. Their armor gleamed like black stone, marked with the crest of the High Council. Their leader stepped forward, tall and proud, his face cruel, his eyes burning with hate. So, the lost girl returns, he said with a sneer. And with her a human. Lyra's grip on Daniel's hand tightened. She knew that voice. It was the same warrior who had ordered her death so many years ago. Her voice trembled but carried strength. You tried to erase me. You failed. The alien leader laughed. You were nothing then, and you are nothing now. Do you think this human can save you? He is weak. He is mortal. Daniel stepped forward, his body shielding Lyra. His calm voice carried across the cliff. She doesn't need saving. She needs a chance to show you that destiny has changed. The warriors drew their weapons, glowing blades that hissed in the wind. But Daniel did not move. Instead, he raised his voice. You call her nothing, he said, pointing at Lyra. But I see something you never understood. She carries strength, kindness, and hope is stronger than your fear. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Lyra's heart pounded. She felt the old fear creeping back, the same fear she had felt when she was a child falling from the cliff. But then she looked at Daniel. His eyes were steady, his presence unshaken. And suddenly, she felt it too, the power to stand. No more running, Lyra said, stepping beside Daniel. Her voice rang clear. You cast me off once. But now, I return not as prey, but as destiny. The alien leader snarled and raised his weapon high. His soldiers followed, preparing to strike. Daniel pulled his blade free, the metal flashing in the dying sun. He leaned close to Elira and whispered, "Stay close. We fight together." The first clash came like thunder. The alien soldiers charged, their heavy steps shaking the cliffside. Daniel moved fast, blocking the first strike and countering with fierce precision. Elira, though untrained with human weapons, lifted her glowing staff, a relic she had kept hidden since her childhood. Light burst from it, stunning two enemies instantly. The battle roared. Sparks flew, blades crashed, and the wind howled around them. Daniel fought like a storm, each movement sharp and powerful. Elira fought with fire in her heart, her staff glowing brighter with every strike. But the enemy leader was strong, far stronger than the rest. He pushed through the chaos and faced Elira once more, his blade pointed at her chest. "This cliff will be your grave again," he hissed. Daniel leapt in front of her, blocking the strike. The force knocked him to his knees, and the alien leader raised his weapon again for a killing blow. Elira's eyes widened in terror, but then something awoke deep inside her. The fear turned into rage, the sorrow into fire. She lifted her staff, and a burst of pure energy shot from it, striking the leader and throwing him back across the cliff. The blast shook the earth, and silence followed. Smoke rose, and the leader lay stunned, barely breathing. Elira stood tall, her staff glowing like a star. She looked down at him, her voice calm but powerful. "I am no longer the child you tried to destroy. I am the future you cannot stop." Daniel rose beside her, breathing hard, his hand resting on her shoulder. He smiled faintly. "Now they know who you are." And for the first time since that terrible day, Elira looked at the cliff not with fear, but with pride. The battle at the cliff ended, but its echoes traveled far. Smoke still rose from the rocks where Elira's staff had unleashed its power. The alien soldiers who survived had already fled, but they carried news with them. News that the lost girl was alive, that she fought beside a human, and that she was no longer weak. Daniel knew what that meant. The High Council would not sit still. They returned to the human outpost hidden deep within the valley. The sun had set, and torches flickered against the wooden walls. Soldiers saluted Daniel as he entered, but their eyes lingered on Elira. She walked beside him with grace, though she could feel the weight of their stares. She was different. She was alien. Inside the command tent, maps covered the tables, and voices of human officers filled the air. They stopped speaking when Daniel arrived. One officer, broad and scarred, looked Elira up and down. "This is the one you risked your life for? She's the reason our patrol was almost slaughtered." Daniel's jaw tightened. "She is the reason we survived," he said firmly. "If not for her, none of us would be here." The officer frowned, but said nothing more. Elira felt heat rise in her chest. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but Daniel gave her a small nod. "Not yet." Later, as the camp quieted, Elira stood near the fire, staring at the flames. Daniel joined her, his face tired but calm. "You fought well today," he said. Elira shook her head. "I nearly lost control. That power, it frightened me." Daniel looked into the fire, the light casting shadows across his face. "Power doesn't choose who is worthy. It waits for someone strong enough to use it. Today, that was you." Before Elira could reply, a horn blasted through the night. Soldiers rushed to the walls, shouting warnings. Daniel grabbed his weapon and Elira's arm. "They found us," he said. From the darkness beyond the valley, hundreds of lights appeared, torches carried by alien warriors. Their banners of the High Council swayed in the night wind. At the center of the army, standing tall and proud, was a figure cloaked in crimson. The soldiers murmured in fear. Elira's heart froze. She knew who it was, the High Counselor himself. The old ruler's voice carried across the valley like thunder. "Give me the girl, and your life will be spared. Resist, and this camp will burn." The humans muttered, fear growing in their ranks. Some looked at Elira with anger, others with doubt. She saw it in their eyes, the question of whether she was worth their lives. Daniel stepped forward, standing tall on the wall. His voice was clear, steady, and defiant. She is under my protection. If you want her, you will have to go through me, through all of us." The camp erupted with cheers from the younger soldiers, but Lyra felt her stomach twist. The Counselor's army was too large. Even with bravery, the humans could not win a battle like this. That night, as the camp prepared for war, Lyra sat alone in her tent. The shadows of the past returned. Falling from the cliff, hearing the Council's laughter, feeling her own helplessness, she clenched her fists. "I cannot let them die for me," she whispered to herself. But then the tent flap opened, and Daniel stepped inside. His eyes studied her, reading her thoughts as if they were written on her face. "You think of leaving," he said. Lyra looked down. "If I go to them, maybe they will spare you. I will not let humans die because of me." Daniel knelt in front of her, his voice quiet but fierce. "Listen to me. They don't want you gone because you are weak. They want you gone because you are strong. You are proof that their rule can be broken. If you give yourself to them, they win. And if they win, every child like you will remain in chains forever." Her eyes filled with tears. "But how can I stop them? I am only one girl." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "You are not alone. You have me. You have us. And together, we will not just fight. We will show them that destiny has already changed." The word struck deep in Lyra's heart. For the first time, she believed them. The next morning, the valley was covered in fog. The Council's army waited outside, restless, ready for blood. Inside, the humans prepared their defenses, setting traps, sharpening blades, tightening armor. Lyra stood at the center, her staff glowing faintly in her hands. Her robe fluttered in the cold wind, her violet eyes burning with new fire. Daniel joined her, sword strapped to his back, determination etched on his face. "When this begins," he said, "there will be no turning back." Lyra lifted her chin. "Then we will not turn back. We will stand together." And as the fog lifted, the first horns of war sounded, echoing through the valley. The Council's wrath had arrived. The valley shook with the sound of war drums. The High Council's army stretched across the horizon, their banners black against the morning sky. The air was heavy with smoke, fear, and the taste of steel. From the camp walls, Daniel and Lyra stood side by side. The human soldiers tightened their armor, fear in their eyes but courage in their hearts. They were outnumbered, but they would not run. The High Counselor himself stepped forward from his army. His crimson cloak trailed behind him, and his golden mask glowed in the pale light. His voice roared like thunder. "Give us the girl, and your suffering ends. Stand against us, and none will survive." A hush fell over the valley. All eyes turned to Lyra. She felt the weight of her destiny pressed down on her shoulders. This was the same voice that had once condemned her, the voice that had ordered her thrown into the abyss. For years it had haunted her dreams. But now, she was no longer the child they tried to destroy. Lyra stepped forward, her staff glowing faintly in her hand. Her voice carried across the valley. "You cast me down once," she said. "You thought I would break, but I climbed back from the shadows. And today, I will show you that no one decides my fate but me." The soldiers of the Council hissed in rage. Their leader raised his hand, and the army surged forward like a black wave. The battle began. Arrows flew, blades clashed, and the valley roared with the chaos of war. Human soldiers fought fiercely, holding the walls against overwhelming numbers. Daniel leapt into the front lines, his sword flashing with deadly precision, his movements sharp and powerful. He fought not just for survival, but for every human, every ally who believed in freedom. Lyra raised her staff, and light burst from it like a second sun. The glow shielded the walls from falling fire, blinding enemy soldiers who tried to climb. She moved gracefully, her silver hair whipping through the smoke, her violet eyes glowing brighter with every strike. But the Counselor himself pushed through the chaos, his crimson cloak untouched by ash. His power was great, his voice commanding the battlefield. When he raised his hand, lightning cracked the sky and struck the ground before Lyra. "You are nothing," he roared. "A child who should have died. A mistake I will erase with my own hand." He swung his staff, black energy swirling like a storm. Elira staggered under the force, her shield cracking, her knees hitting the dirt. The counselor towered over her, ready to strike the final blow. Daniel saw it from the walls. He fought his way through blood and fire, cutting down enemies, forcing his body to move faster than his pain. He reached Elira just as the counselor's blade came down. With a roar, Daniel blocked it, the clash ringing like thunder. The impact drove him to one knee, his arms shaking with strain. The counselor sneered. One human cannot stop destiny. Daniel's voice was fierce, unshaken. One human is enough when he's not alone. At his words, Elira's eyes widened. Her fear burned away, replaced by fire. She rose to her feet, her staff blazing brighter than ever before. Energy burst from her, surrounding both her and Daniel in a shield of light. Together, they stood, human and alien, side by side, stronger than either had ever been alone. The counselor struck again, but this time Elira met his blade. The staff in her hands pulsed with pure power, and with Daniel's strength beside her, the force multiplied. A blast of light erupted, so strong it shattered the counselor's weapon and threw him back across the battlefield. Silence fell. The council's army froze, staring in shock. The crimson-cloaked leader lay on the ground, defeated, his mask cracked, his voice silent. Elira stood tall, her chest rising with heavy breaths, her glowing staff pointing toward the sky. Her voice rang across the valley, clear and powerful. No more chains. No more fear. This war ends today. The council cannot rule what it cannot break. The enemy's soldiers looked at one another. Some dropped their weapons. Others turned and fled. The humans cheered, their voices echoing like thunder across the mountains. Daniel placed his hand on Elira's shoulder, his face covered in dirt and sweat, but his eyes filled with pride. "You did it," he said softly. Elira shook her head. "No, we did it. Together." The valley grew quiet as the last of the enemy vanished into the distance. The war was not completely over, but its course had changed forever. That night, under the stars, Elira stood on the cliff where it had all begun, the same cliff where she had once been thrown to her death. Daniel joined her, his presence steady and comforting. She looked out over the vast horizon, her heart filled with peace. "Years ago, I thought this cliff was the end of my story," she whispered. "But now I see it was only the beginning." Daniel smiled, his voice low and certain. "And now you've changed destiny itself." The wind carried their words into the night, a promise that the future would no longer be ruled by fear. And for the first time, Elira felt free,